We're going to look at a few more examples of solving equations with rational exponents. We're going to start off with a pretty simple one. We've got x to the 2/3 power equals 9. The first thing I'm going to do is rewrite this thing as a radical. So this would actually be the cube root of x squared equals 9. As we learned before, if you want to get rid of a cube root, you're just going to raise both sides to the 3rd power. The cube cancels out the cube root so that you're just left with x squared equals 9 to the 3rd power, which 9 to the 3rd power is 729. Okay? Now, I want you to think very carefully about this step. X squared equals 729. I want to know what number could I plug in for x so that when I square it, I end up with 729. Now, most of you will think like, oh, it's just a square. To get rid of that, do the square root. That's absolutely correct. If you square root, it cancels out. So you would be left with x equals 27. But isn't it also true that a negative 27 squared would also be 729? So here when you're taking a square root, your answer could be positive or negative 27. 27 squared is 729, so square root of 729 could be positive 27. But negative 27 squared is also 729. So square root of 729 could also be negative 27. It could be either one. All right, let's try another one. Same thing, I'm going to take this problem and I'm going to rewrite it as a radical. So this would be 3 times the 7th root of x squared minus 11 equals 1. And what we want to do here is we want to go through and get rid of one number at a time until the only thing left is just x. We're going to start with the number that's detached here. We're going to start by adding 11 to both sides, which brings us to 3 times the 7th root of x squared equals 12. Now I can focus on the number in front. I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides, which brings us to the 7th root of x squared equals 4. So if you have a 7th root and you're trying to get rid of it, you're just going to raise both sides to the 7th power, right? 7th root and the 7th power cancel each other out. Now we've got x squared equals 4 to the 7th power, 16,384. Now to get rid of the square, we're going to do the square root on both sides. We end up with x equals square root of 16,384 is 128. That makes sense because in your calculator, 128 squared is 16,384. But remember that negative 128 squared would also give you 16,384. So here you don't have one answer, you actually have two answers, plus or minus 128. Let's try one more of these. All right, so 2 minus 5x to the 2/5 power, that would be written as 5th root of 2 minus 5x squared equals 4. We're going to go through and get rid of one thing at a time until the only thing left is just x. All right, so this is a 5th root. To get rid of a 5th root, we're going to raise both sides to the 5th power. The 5th root and the 5th power cancel out. So now we have 2 minus 5x squared equals 4 to the 5th power, 1024. That next thing I see over here on the left is that exponent. This is squared. To get rid of a square, you use a square root. So if you square a square root, it cancels out, which leaves us with 2 minus 5x equals square root of 1024. So square root of 1024 could be positive or negative 32. 32 squared is 1024, but negative 32 squared is also 1024. So it could be either one. So we actually need to solve this thing twice. We need to solve one equation using a positive 32, and we need to solve another equation using a negative 32. So we're going to end up with two solutions here. From here on out, solving for x is easy. This is a positive 2, so we subtract 2 on both sides. That gives us negative 5x equals 30. And then divide by negative 5 on both sides. Gives us x equals negative 6. Okay, so that's one of our solutions. We're going to come over to the other equation and do the exact same steps. Positive 2, so again we subtract 2 on both sides. Negative 5x equals negative 34. Negative 32 minus 2 is negative 30. And then divide by negative 5 on both sides. My final answer over here, negative 34 divided by negative 5. Two negatives make a positive, so I could write it as 34 over 5. Or if you actually type it into your calculator, 34 divided by 5 is 6.8.